Thank you so much for listening to Colorado Today. I'm joined by Robert Tate, the founder of Downing Street Group, and also Prosper Loza, a partner at Downing Street Group. It's been a roller coaster of a ride for home buyers, home sellers, and anyone who's dying to make the American dream come true. And in case you don't know what the American dream is, having a home, being able to prosper, that house has to have the nice little neat white picket fence. No, I don't like white picket fences, but that's not the point of the American dream. The American dream in the last few years has felt like it's pretty dead. And that goes for it. The American dream wasn't about necessarily race, religion, any of that. It was the ability to get a lifelong home and prosper and have a family and things like that. These are things that have become very, very hard in the Denver metro area for anybody who's not incredibly wealthy. Middle class is pretty much, I feel like, being wiped out in the Denver area. You either have a lot of money or you just don't, and you're not going to get anywhere. The days of getting married, buying a house, and starting a family are really challenged anymore. So personally, I feel like the American dream has died a horrid, awful death, and I think that's wrong. But the housing market and the economy, let's face it, it hasn't been perfect, and you're paying $8 to $10 for a dozen of eggs. The only good thing I think I've seen out of any of this is the housing market has cooled down just a tiny bit. So that means you might be able to find more houses to begin with, but maybe more house than you were planning on for the money. At the same time, the trade-off on this is that interest rates are also up. And Robert, I'm going to start with you on this. I don't know at what age you bought a house, but I can't picture renting or even going out to buy a house as an 18 to 20 whatever year old and getting out and getting a job, and maybe it isn't the highest paying job for your first couple of jobs. I can't even picture what it's like to try to get started in Denver anymore. Rent prices are absurd. How do you even make it in the city is the question.
It's, we've, in recent years, due to population demand, growth, etc., we've become extremely expensive. Like the median household income is $78,000, which is much higher than the rest of the United States. And then that paired with just, housing prices year over year that have really climbed and escalated. And then on top of that, unless you have a decently educated job in a tech field, or, tech's dying right now is the news of Facebook and
yes, it
else.
is. Actually, Google just laid off like 6,000 people worldwide.
Yeah.
They're not the only ones.
So it is something that unless you're, making over and above that, it is a struggle. And, it doesn't mean that give up hope and get frustrated and et cetera, because that's not a good cycle. You have to start thinking about it and plan it sooner than necessarily. Like when I bought a house, I'm almost 40. When I bought a house, I bought one at, 26. I got an FHA loan, but I happened to be surrounded by people that really understood all that and were implanting in my brain at a young age, like, do this, because if you look at the net worth of a homeowner versus the net worth of a non-homeowner, it's like ridiculously disparaging. Like, the net worth of a non-homeowner on average is like 16 to 24,000 or some really small number, where the net worth of a homeowner is like 10x that, right?
Wow.
So I had the right education around me. We saved up, but saved up a little bit of money for that first, home. And that, the first home kind of lets you springboard into the next phase of life a few years later. Like without that springboard, it's just hard.
Yeah, it's your stepping stone.
Yeah.
It is your stepping stone. The thing about it is, you're working, I don't know, let's say you're young and you're working at a McDonald's. And grant you, McDonald's has upped the pay considerably. And let's face it, I think minimum wage in Denver proper now, starting January 1st, is $17.29 an hour.
Yeah.
That sounds like a whole lot of money, considering when I got into radio. We won't even talk about how long ago that was. I got minimum wage and a car, the use of a vehicle all the time. But it was $3.35 an hour. Okay? Yeah.
You can't even buy gas for that.
No. Yeah. You can't even get a gallon of gas, especially right now because it's soaring again. But how in the city and county of Denver And even those surrounding areas. I don't want to just lay all the blame on Denver. Let's face it, it's expensive in Inglewood. It's expensive in Lakewood. It's everywhere.
Or Aurora, yeah.
Yeah, or even Aurora. And the question is how do you, starting out young, even renting at this point is absurd. Unless you have, I know my own son, who's now 28, he had like 4 roommates. And that was a thing, but that was so they could rent not the biggest place in Washington Park, but to have 4 and 5 roommates. I mean, yeah. So it's how do you even get a start in the Denver market?
So up until recently, it was kind of house hacking, right? It was connecting you with the right loan officers that understood, certain grant programs and other types of way to structure your financing. Plus, sadly for a lot of people, it was getting roommates and getting leases in place prior to the purchase, et cetera. And all that could help you, really qualify for that loan and get it through.
Showing you had a history.
Yeah. And a lot of my clients who house hacked, have grown up and done really great things and actually started to invest in real estate. But that's up until recently. The government very recently just passed a bill that is really supposed to help not only the past ethnic areas of Denver, but as well have those people that were impacted by the gentrification in past ethnic areas get another leap, get another step forward. And the person that's really the biggest expert on this program is also here with us, Prosper Loza.
Right, and we're going to get into some of the cool things that actually Denver is trying to do. And it is kind of cool, so we'll get to that in just a minute. And let's talk gentrification. There aren't a lot of places left in Denver that are original, that haven't been turned into neighborhoods that a lot of people can't afford now. And I live in an area that I'm watching it creep in on the sides, but I don't want gentrification to go through the Globeville neighborhood where I live. Globeville's an interesting place, but it does feel like one of the last few neighborhoods that Denver has not screwed up.
Yeah, which is surprising because when I started in 2008, everybody was talking about Globeville as like what Five Points eventually became, which is a huge gentrification area.
Yeah.
And they're like, Globeville's going to be it, right? And it's gotten better than it was, but it hasn't hit that critical mass point.
I'm hoping it won't, and I think a good portion of the neighborhood works really hard to make sure that there are elements there to be a turnoff. But at the same time, Globeville, I think it was the first area to have streetlights. Electric streetlights, or
really?
They might have been gas, I can't remember, back in the day, and because that was all worker housing for the Argo Mill, which is long gone and ended up becoming a EPA Superfund site. But that's another story for another day. Anyway, Denver has a problem with Globeville. They always have. And it was always treated like its own little entity anyway. So it really is swallowed up and surrounded by Denver, but half the time they don't take care of services. You don't have stores. You don't have services of any kind over there. It's not very pretty for a lot of reasons in some cases. But you've got an old historic neighborhood. I mean, the house I live in was built in 1886.
Yeah,
and
everything there was.
Huge lots. And I know I saw a company tear down a couple of the older houses, and we're not talking monster-sized homes. And they built, the typical, look, we're putting in kind of an ugly duplex type thing. And the thing that I was laughing at about that is I think they were going for $600,000 a side. And it's literally right next to the rail yard for BSNF or BNSF or whatever the railroad company is. I mean, it's right there at the gate.
Yeah.
And the fence. And I'm thinking, if somebody buys this, they're going to move in and they're going to hate everything in the neighborhood. And they've got nonstop trains right there.
Yeah, I know the two you're talking about. I saw them getting scraped up.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this?
I know this. And it's like, oh, great. But you didn't put in affordable housing. And I'm not saying that. And Denver's answer to affordable housing anymore appears to be, let's throw up some more ugly apartment buildings and call it affordable housing. Not everybody wants to live in an apartment.
No. That was actually one of the largest topics of the, 8 of the 87 candidates 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And it's not 87.
I know. There's a million people running for mayor
like
right now.
27 or something.
Yeah, there's
crazy.
a lot.
But affordable housing was one of, it was crime, affordable housing, and I forget the third topic they were really talking about, was the hottest topics that is going on in Denver Metro right now.
Yeah, the ugly apartment buildings everywhere you turn around.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and that's not the answer.
No.
You know, we don't want to look, no insult to anybody who loves this, but look at, in parts of Asia, some of the buildings that are stacked up. I mean, we're talking massive skyscrapers that are just people living on top of people, living on top of people. And I feel like that's Denver's answer to trying to stuff people somewhere that they don't care whether they can afford a house. They don't care what the quality of life is. Look, apartment life is great sometimes in the right conditions, especially when you're young and you're just kind of getting started. But, once you have a family, I personally don't want to live in an apartment with little kids. I want my own place. I want somewhere to have a small garden and let a dog run around. And once again, getting back to the American dream isn't being stacked on top of each other for what's being called affordable when you can't find anything less than $1,700 plus a month for an
you'd
apartment.
Be surprised. So I'm a little bit younger than you guys. I'm 27, and everybody in my age range, believe it or not, nobody wants to live in an apartment building. Everybody does want a single family home.
Yeah.
They want a yard for their dogs, for their kids, whatever it could be.
Right.
They want a garage for all their toys, skis, whatever it could
Cars,
be.
whatever.
They want a garage. And, they want to be able to open their back door and let their dog out in the morning and not have to go down a, elevator for...
Or a bunch of stairs, or, look, I'm trying to take my dog over to an area of green.
Exactly. Yep.
Where it can maybe do its business and run back inside to be trapped in the apartment. To me, quality of life can, depending on your outlook, and I may be being snooty about it, quality of life for me matters, and an apartment complex for the rest of my life is not a good thought. Now, to change this, talking to a lot of people in your age range, Prosper, they don't ever see being able to own a home.
Correct.
Ever.
It's very unattainable mentally, and it's very unattainable for a lot of people in my age range.
Yeah, and it's heartbreaking to look at the outlook of a lot of younger people than me and have them say, no, things are never going to be great for us.
Yep. And
well,
even if you have a decent paying job in tech or whatever it is,
yep.
saving up for a down payment on a home, for closing costs, for earnest money, which is money you have to put down for a house when you're in the process of buying it, for those who might not know. Earnest money, $5,000-$10,000 is what it could usually be. It's tough.
It's daunting.
Yeah.
And I think it's heartbreaking to listen to younger generations talk about how they are never going to get ahead, how the days of really being able to prosper, and that's a difficult word for me to use when your name is Prosper, but to get ahead, they feel like those days are dead. And that's really the most heartbreaking thing. Look, okay, I had the ability to go out and make a ton of money. That's awesome. But it feels like to the younger generation that they're never going to have the opportunities to do that. They're never going to own a home. They're going to be stuck in the apartment life for the rest of their days. That's really depressing, Robert. That has nothing to do with an American dream.
No, I mean, in the United States Constitution, it's life, liberty, and pursuit of property, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's there. And, I think in earlier generations, just with being somewhat responsible, right, you could wake up one day and purchase a house.
You
right?
could, yeah.
Nowadays, it takes planning. And, I want to give the impression you still can do it, right? Like, it is still very possible. It's just not, wake up, turn to your significant other and go, hey, let's get out of here. Let's go buy a house, right? It's better if you don't do it that way. So, I always say get engaged early. Like, get with really intelligent professionals. Like, Google, sometimes has great information and sometimes doesn't.
Right.
Get with really great professionals a year, 2 years out before you think you really can do something so that you plan it. No different than retirement. You shouldn't wake up at 55 and be like, I should probably start planning for this.
I need to start saving because I may only have, 10, 15 years left. Yeah, you may be in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, and I'm sure it's this way in every big city, but Denver seems particularly bad at I don't know, greedy developers maybe? I don't know what it is, but it does feel as though Denver only cares about being a wealthy city. So to hell with the middle class and to hell with anybody who works their tail off, but they don't care. Is that the impression?
Well, so there's to geek out on it, right? There's three main issues going on, right? One, a lot of cities aren't very kind to developers, and that's coming through of it's hard to get development permits, it's hard to get anything through the city. So even developers that might be more keen to, supply for affordable housing, they really struggle getting through the system. Then you got water issues, right? So
Yeah, it's Colorado. Colorado and water issues have been a thing forever.
totally. In order to help address some of the first issues, Denver actually did a lot of development credit. So right now, in order to develop one property, you have to develop so many affordable units. Now you could trade those credits, you could sell those credits. We don't have time to go into that complicated
Right.
system, but that was one way Denver attempted to address this issue with developers. But at the end of the day, we just need more people at the city and county building to process a lot of infill applications.
Yeah,
You know.
that's actually a thing right
for
now
sure.
is staffing for everybody. I mean, one of the hottest topics out there, if you just listen to any of the media out there, if you want to, is trash being picked up in Aurora, trash being picked up in Denver. It's not happening because they don't have the staff. And so staffing, it isn't just a trash issue for this city. It is a staffing issue in a lot of areas. But it sort of feels like Denver opened its doors to every developer, regardless of how many permits they have to get in the process, and just said, we don't care, rip down everything historic, build whatever you want. Oh, there's a golf course. You can have that too. And it does feel like that's been what's driven a lot of what we see in Denver. Now, Denver is beautiful, and it's not at the same time. It's just become a mess, and it's kind of sad. Yeah, we have the geography is beautiful, but the city itself is not anymore.
Right.
And I feel like that's where they've just gotten out of hand trying to develop places to stuff people. And there's nothing affordable about renting anymore.
No, I mean, affordable in Denver is almost a joke, right?
It is a joke. Yeah, it is a big joke.
Yeah. So I think, there's this huge right as we popped out of the Great Recession, developers went a little bit nuts here in Denver. And because we had just seen our largest population growth between 2000 and 2010, the city was like, oh my God, we have to do something, right? And so they were just, giving out zoning permits and
They were.
zoning changes like candy, right? And then probably as it started to approach 18 and 19, the government popped up and said, oh my God, what is going on? And they kind of started to clench down.
Right.
They almost overreacted. They overreacted one way, then the pendulum swing, and they overreacted the other way, right? Hopefully between the mayor candidates and then this just being a continued topic of house affordability, which is what I think drove the decision to really implement what they're calling the Metro DPA, which Prosper's an expert on.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a minute.
Yeah, I think they're struggling with the answer, but they're trying to come up with one.
Okay, and kudos to the city, since I've just done a great job of trashing them. Kudos to the city for at least trying to do something. Now, Prosper, it's odd when we started talking about this, and this is why I decided I wanted you guys on, because it really does kind of play in with my thoughts on the American dream. But there were big problems, and it wasn't just Denver, so I'm not just going to clump Denver in this one. But we had some real problems in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s with who was able to buy a house where, partially because of color, ethnicity, things like that. So they did introduce a new program, and why don't you talk a little bit more about this and kind of explain how this came to be and what it does for people.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm super excited to talk about this program. Once again, my name is Prosper Loza, and I work here at Engel and Volkers, Denver. I am not a Metro DPA representative. I'm just super excited about the program.
But you know all about it.
I know all about it, and I'm super excited to talk about it. I've been in contact with the program director, Diana. She's super helpful, and like I said, I'm just super excited about this program. So there's a couple things about this program. So it just quite literally got released on the morning of January 17th, so
Okay.
3 days ago, at 9 a.m. And here's a little bit about the program. So first off, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer for this program. So while Colorado in general does have a lot of down payment assistance programs, such as CHAFA. I'm sure more people are familiar with CHAFA, which does things like, up to 3% of your first mortgage. So, you can get up to $6,000 on a $200,000 mortgage. No repayment required. They do have some awesome programs. The parameters are a little bit more stringent than what I'm going to be talking about. So once again, it's called the Metro Down Payment Assistance Program, and Metro DPA has two programs. One of them is just a general program that is not having to do with the social equity we'll be talking about, and the other one is. So I'll start with the social equity program that just came out. That's pretty mind-boggling. I think this is one of the biggest initiatives Denver has done in a while, and come out with something like this. So it's basically what we've been talking about this entire show, kind of that forgotten middle class.
Right.
So if you're not low income and you don't qualify, because Denver actually does a pretty decent job of helping people with low income, such as EBT cards, helping pay for cell phones, helping pay for, I think they have a program called LEAP for electricity.
Yeah, LEAP.
LEAP. They do a decent job, but you have to be like making less than $30,000 a year, right? And then once again, there's that middle class. Are you rich or are you poor? And then there's programs and incentives for those two spectrums. But then there's the forgotten middle class, right? Mm-hmm. You have a good job, you make decent money, but you don't qualify for the low income stuff, and it's hard for you in this economy to save up for a down payment on a house. So what they just released is called the Metro DPA Social Equity Program. So this is very important. So if you are a resident or descendant of someone who lived in a redlined Denver area between 1938 and 2000, you are eligible for a $15,000 or $25,000 grant,
right,
towards down payment. So the biggest thing about this is that it's a grant. A grant means it's forgivable. This means you do not have to pay it back after 36 months. So that's pretty big here, because a lot of times some of these are not forgivable. It's also, the assistance is interest-free, 3-year forgivable loan. And here's the other thing, it can be used for the down payment and your closing costs.
What is a redlined area in Denver? Just give us an example.
Yeah, so a redlined area was areas in Colorado between they're specifying on 1938 and 2000, but it's been going on for a while. Between 1938 and 2000, that mortgage loans were disproportionately denied to people in these areas. And the thing is, it actually you don't have to be of a certain race or ethnicity with this program. That's the other thing. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, purple, blue, orange. All that matters is, did your family live in these areas? Mm-hmm. Now, over the air, we don't have visuals, so it'll be hard to exactly describe, but these areas include Globeville, Whittier, Valverde, I'm trying to think of
parts of the Golden Triangle.
Golden Triangle, 5 Points.
Mm-hmm.
All the areas that you kind of could imagine. Actually certain parts in Glendale. There's a certain
Mm-hmm.
part. So like I said, it's hard. I don't have a map to show over the air, but these are the areas that they are. So basically, listen, what does that mean? So if you're a descendant, so that means, did your mom or your grandparents live within these areas? If they did, you quite literally qualify immediately for a $25,000 forgivable grant. Now, the other thing is, your parents did not have to be homeowners. They could have just lived there, so rented or owned. So either one works. So if your grandparents or parents rented or owned within these certain areas, you qualify for this $25,000 assistance. So you can take the grant of $25,000, or the other thing I love about this is they are also doing fixed lower rates. So you don't have to so you can do borrow assistance of $25,000. Oh, the other thing I really want to point out here is the income limits. They don't have super low income limits. Like I said, these are designed for the middle class. The income limits for the $25,000 grant is $94,000.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's high.
That is
pretty
high.
Normally programs like these, it's like, oh, you have to make less than 40 grand, 30
Right.
grand, right?
Right.
Which 30 grand in this economy is
you're dead.
Get you a couple carton of eggs.
Yeah, exactly.
If you can find the eggs.
Yes,
If
if
you
you
can
can
find
find them first.
And the income limit, so if you make less than $176,000 a year, you automatically qualify for the $15,000. Once again, that's a pretty high income limit.
It is.
We don't see income limits this high on most grant programs. Here's the other thing I love. If you don't want to take the 20, let's say you're like, I do have some money saved up for a house, okay? You can instead take a lower rate. So instead of taking borrow assistance, you get $0 borrow assistance, so no money towards closing costs, no money towards down payment. However, you get a rate of 4.25%.
Oh, that beats the current rate right now.
Or if you if you make less than $94,000, you get a rate locked in for a 30-year fixed at 4.25%. If you make less than $176,000 a year, you get locked in at 4.75%. For those maybe who haven't been watching interest rates in the last 6 to 12 months,
Ouch. How can you not watch them?
4.25% is pretty darn good.
It is.
Okay, we're looking still. I mean, rates today are.
Depends on who you are, but
It depends on who you are, but
Mid
rates
sixes?
are mid sixes,
Yeah.
high fives on a good day, mid sixes. Obviously, in the last 6 to 12 months, we saw rates at 7%, creeping up towards the 8s.
Yeah, and I don't see the Feds lowering interest rates anytime soon. In fact, I think they're going to keep rising them. Wow, that's good English. Raising them in an effort to slow inflation. And even though we may not see as big a rate increases as we have in the last few months, they're going to go up.
Correct. So, we could sit here all day and talk about rates and what we think they're going to do. Nobody knows. That's really the
Nope.
truth. But like I said, what I love about this is that you can either do $25,000 borrow assistance, $15,000. If you're like, I have money saved up, there's other options such as, like I said, 4.25% 30-year fixed. That is a steal in, historically, that's a good
Yeah,
interest
it's
rate.
great.
So, like I said, this is a really interesting program. The other thing is, if you do not have, one thing I wanted to touch on is you can buy anywhere in Colorado with this. So you do have to be a descendant of people within these redlined areas. So like I said, Whittier, Five Points, Globeville. However, when it comes to getting the money to put the down payment on the house, you can buy anywhere. We're talking Arvada, Aurora. It goes all the way out to Castle Rock, Loveland, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, Lock Bowie, Lone Tree. So to actually use the down payment, you can buy anywhere. So
Okay.
it's not.
You're not stuck
People
just
have asked
staying
me,
in Denver.
do you have to buy within those redlined areas? No, you do not. And the other thing I wanted to touch base on is if you do not have a descendant within those redline areas, Metro DPA actually does have other programs available. So they do 30-year fixed rate first mortgages with assistance and 3-year forgivable loans at 0% interest for people that
aren't in the areas that are redlined.
So if you're thinking about buying a house and you're not qualifying for the social equity program, there are still programs that Metro DPA has. The caveat to any of this, it's like, I talked to Diana and I'm like, what
What's
am I
the
missing?
catch?
What am I missing?
Yeah.
There really is none. You do have to have a credit score above 640,
Well, yeah.
which, that's, once again, a low barrier to entry in my
That
opinion.
is a real low
and
barrier
I
to
think you have to hold the house for like 3 years.
You do. So actually, here's the thing. I talked to the program director yesterday. You can actually buy another house after the first year, but
Oh.
you do have to hold on. You cannot sell the home.
Oh, you could
in
rent it
36
out
months.
to
You can
somebody
rent it out.
else,
So
but you
after a
have
year,
to keep it.
You have to keep it for 36 months, which is 3 years. But you can actually, after 12 months, go ahead and use this program again and buy another primary residence after that. So, as I said, these are
Cool.
low. And I'm like, what am I missing here, Diana? What's the catch here? And she's like, there really is no catch. Denver is aware of the average rent being $2,600 a month.
Yeah.
Across Colorado, and they're aware of the inability of the middle class to be able to buy a home. Is it maybe politicians right now pushing this? And I don't really know who exactly pushed this program through, but what I do know is I want to nail this in. I said, what is the catch here? And she's like, there really is no catch. Denver is just aware of middle class people being unable to buy a house because they just don't have that down payment. And so this is why
Yeah, they're being pushed out.
This is
in
why
fact.
they rolled this program out. So Once again, my name is Prosper Loza with Angle and Volkers Denver. If you have any questions about it, you can always reach out to me. My number is 720-254-2801. There's some other interesting things about it. I could go on and on, but that's kind of the gist of this Metro DPA program. Super cool. I haven't seen anything like it since I've been in real estate in the last 5 years.
No, I've never heard of anything like this either.
I really haven't.
Once again, you can get a hold of Prosper. Give your phone number again.
Yeah, my phone number is 720-254-2801. I work for Angle and Volkers Denver, and like I said, it's just super exciting. And
I love it.
Yeah.
No, at least it's a glimmer of hope. I've been speaking with Robert Tate, the founder of Downing Street Group, and Prosper Lopez. I almost said Lopez. Loza.
Hey, whatever works.
Wrong name. A partner with Downing Street Group. Thanks to both of you for coming in and kind of
for having us.
highlighting a really cool program that Denver's doing.
Yeah,
We're super excited about it.
Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. Like this could be huge if people are aware of this. This could be really, really great. The biggest problem in something like this is awareness.
Yeah,
It is.
exactly.
Thanks to you both.